Good morning.
Good morning.
You want to go ahead with the first question?
So we've been talking, and I met Melanie in New York at Alvin Ailey School April 2017. I was working with the USA IBC, and we were up there to find what kind of program we were going to offer for teacher training. And I think YAGP was going on in Lincoln Center at the time. And as we sat down and talked, we found out that we were from the same city and that we have literally crisscrossed into School of American Ballet. And I think we should know each other really well with all of this. But it's very unique. This is the dance world.
Yeah,
and
yeah, it is.
so you've heard a little bit about my crazy background, and we have to admit, I mean, Mississippi in the 60s and 70s was not a place for male dancers to be dancing. We all know the story. But talk a little bit about your journey on it, because you know it too.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started dance training at a Y in Jackson, Mississippi as a recreational activity. My mother enrolled my sister and I, and we were taking ballet at the Y, not with any aspiration of it being a career. But when my dad was stationed to Columbia, South Carolina, I'm an Army brat, the teacher at the Y said to my mother, "Your daughter has talent, and you should keep her in dance training." And she recommended the school that I would attend, Foster School of Dance, and then Calvert Brody School of Dance in South Carolina. So I say that because without that first teacher, I probably wouldn't be here right now, because my parents had no idea about the arts, didn't know anything about it, dance, and who knows if I would have kept dancing. So I would love to find out who that teacher was, and David's going to do a little research for me, because we figured out the time frame probably between like 69 and 72. And I'd like to thank that person.
I'm going to find out.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
So how did your time in the South shape your artistic voice, especially when you transitioned into the fast-paced, highly competitive New York dancing?
So of course, I love the South, right? I like the pace of the South. I like the kindness and hospitality of the people. I'm going to say that first and foremost. And then when you get to a city like New York, it's a different reality. And I moved to New York as a teenager, so I didn't have my parents with me. I was living with a family. I finished high school in New York. So I was really pretty much an adult before I should have been an adult, doing adult things and hanging out with people much older than myself. So I quickly kind of became a city dweller, right? And I would move around the city on my own. But every time I return to the South, I go, wow, I actually kind of miss the pace of life, In the city, you have to keep going very quickly. And as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, I'd like to slow down a bit.
There's an innocence, I think, in the South that we take for granted, and then you get to a city like New York, and it can be brutal because you don't know what kind of characters you're going to come
Very
across,
brutal.
and it's a different world. But at the same time, when you get used to that landscape, you find the goodness of it as well.
Oh, of course. And the thing is, as a dancer, right, we're sort of in our own bubble, right? Wherever we are, we're in a bubble. When I trained at the School of American Ballet, that's certainly a specific environment. When I went on to be at Dance Theater of Harlem also. So dancers, we kind of stay with each other. And so that helps us out quite a bit in cities around the world.
Yeah, I remember when I turned 16. Well, I was 15, turning 16. I went to participate in the Alvin Ailey summer camp. In the old building, when they didn't have any AC, they made
I
you
was there.
walk up the stairs.
I was there.
It was awesome. But I remember it was my first time kind of being in Atlanta. I was a fish in a really small pond, and so I thought I was really great. But when I went up to New York, there was an edge there, with all these students from all across the world, just training, and I realized, like, wow, I got a long way to go. And I got knocked on my butt a lot, and so I wonder, so what was your experience from going from South Carolina to New York? what like moments did you have of like, man, this is way different, or wait, this is whoa, this is way harder? What was that for you?
So in my studio with my teacher Ann Brody, we performed a lot of ballets. We performed a lot, and I think I felt I was good. To be honest with you, I thought I was very good. So when I arrived at Dance Theater of Harlem at 14 as an apprentice, I felt like I had already performed a lot, had a lot of experience, and so I wasn't so intimidated. And at that time, the majority of the dancers were about 6 or 7 years older than me. So I was treated like a baby ballerina. So people took care of me. So I wasn't really feeling like I was competing so much because I was sort of on my own in a little separate, age group. Now later on, a few years later, more teenagers came into the company, but I had already established my friend group with the older dancers.
And what she's saying about this apprenticeship, this is a topic that kind of goes over people's head, but if I can give a little insight to it, to get offered an apprenticeship at that age, that is a milestone. I think the only other one with you at that is Darcy Kistler at New York City Ballet. She was 13 or 14. And
we were at SAB together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were in the same place together, and we're just
We probably saw each other and
yeah, same teachers, the whole kit and caboodle. But the apprenticeship is. I was listening to Catherine Morgan the other day and she was talking about what it means to get into a ballet company. She said, so you get your apprenticeship and then you get into the company, and she said, now you think you're safe, but you're not, because you have to prove you're worthy to get in, your worthiness to get into the ballets, and then you're shooting for the demi solos, and it's just this, and it's the most difficult life, I think. I mean, but how was it at an early age of 14 and 15?
So I was still in high school, and I was going to professional children's school, and I was going to school in the morning from 8:30 to 9:30. Then I'd rush uptown to DTH to dance, from 10 until 6, first company class and then rehearsal. And then when the company was on tour, I was doing my schoolwork by correspondence. And Arthur Mitchell, the director, let me say, he was relentless that we had to make good grades, those of us who were in high school. So he was checking, we have an artistic director who's now checking homework and making sure, and he was very adamant, if you don't have good grades, you will not perform. And people thought, well, that's rather harsh. Well, I think he was right about that. It was like he wasn't just going to say, like, throw your education to the side and just dance. It was important for those of us in high school. For him, he wanted us to graduate. And so that was challenging, making sure I was staying in good standing with my academics, and also dancing at a high level with the company. I was dancing as a corps member, even as an apprentice. I was performing sometimes 3 or 4 ballets a night, which is typical in a company. I was performing soloist roles, and when I graduated from high school at 16, that's when I got a company contract.
Wow.
So, that's what he told me. He was like, when you graduate from high school, I'm going to give you a company contract. And so that did happen.
So that makes me think, what were your systems of support? I mean, your parents, I imagine, I have a 15-year-old, and so I'm thinking, like, sending my child up to New York to live.
Well, I think,
what did that look like?
Well, my parents were, at that point, they were in Virginia and then finally in North Carolina with my dad moving around. I was living initially with a family in Brooklyn who had daughters who were dancers. So my parents felt comfortable that I was in sort of a familial kind of situation, going, home at night. So I wasn't on my own. I was living with a family, and I was traveling with the 2 daughters, to the city. But eventually I was on my own traveling. And then finally I ended up moving in with one of the dancers. But the support system, I think, is really the other dancers, it's the teachers, and certainly, Mr. Mitchell was like a father to me.
So it seemed like your parents were on board.
Oh yeah.
With you in this career, in this in this journey that you were traveling on.
Yeah.
How important is it for the parental or guardian support in a dancer's life or a performer's life?
Well, I think it's extremely important. So my parents trusted, the people who were saying to them, your daughter has talent, your daughter should keep going. So they had a tremendous amount of trust, and they also knew I wanted to dance, and they understood from the teacher Ann Brody, okay, Melanie is African American. In the 70s, not so many opportunities for a person who wants to perform ballet who looks like me. So they understood that. The teacher helped them understand that. I didn't really understand it so much myself. So the parents said, if this is what you want to do, we're going to let you go do that. They kept in touch with me, and like I said, I had Arthur Mitchell, who will make sure you're kind of on the straight and narrow. I don't know if anybody knows much about him, but he was one of those directors, and the teachers. So I felt like I had enough people around me who were assisting in that. But I also felt quite alone sometimes.
It is a lonely place.
Yeah.
I was always told a company's like a big family.
Yeah.
And sometimes that big family is at war with each other. I mean, because the competitive,
Oh, yeah.
edge comes in, and then you might see your best friend getting a role that you're looking for, and
Sure.
how did they get that? And all of the garbage of that starts to get in. And I think in these big companies, that's the hardest thing for me, it was one of the hardest things to maneuver. And I was glad when I got out of it in a way.
It's tough because, even though I danced with Columbia City Ballet, my friends were all sort of dancing the same types of roles. But, when you're in the big companies, right, you're waiting for the casting to go up. Sometimes you see your name on the list. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's there and then the red line goes through it and you're not in the piece anymore. We've all had that happen. So, you're constantly kind of on edge about something, and which sort of pushes you in a strange way to stay on top of your game with it.
Exactly. I just remember we would all go to that board when she would post the schedule for the next day. The next day was this long, and my schedules are 2-3 weeks for this long.
Right, yeah, I know.
But yeah, you look for those little tidbits of inspiration, and then it might be there and it might not. It might be and you never know when, lightning's going to strike, so to speak.
That's right.
So I guess that makes me think about the word resilience.
Yeah.
And how important it is to have a spirit of resilience in this industry. I remember my mom, one summer or one winter, she took me to audition for all of these shows, and I didn't get anything, but all my friends did.
Yeah.
And so she took me out to eat, and so she told me, she was like, okay, well, are we going to continue? I said, no, I'm not going to continue. I think I'm done. Next year, I'm going to do something else. And she looked at me, she said, no, you are. And so the next year, she put me in more classes. She made me see every performance with my friends dancing. I sat in the audience and I watched them. I felt miserable because, they're up there dancing, doing what I want to do, and I have to be in the audience. But the next year, she took me back, and I got almost every single one of the auditions. And so that was the start of building that attitude and that character of resilience. How important is resilience to you and what you've experienced?
Well, it's extremely important. So, there were moments when I wanted to stop. I mean, while I was dancing professionally. I mean, there are moments, it's not all glamorous and beautiful as people imagine. In fact, my family thought that. They never really understood how much work it took to get on stage. So they'd see that product. So they didn't really understand what was behind the scenes. So I think it's a lot of you have to do your own sort of self-talk, I'm going to call it. You have to keep, encouraging yourself, because it may not be coming from the teacher, the director, and certainly not the friends if you're, competing with them. So it's hard. I just think it's you have to kind of continue to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if you can keep answering that, I think it gives you a little bit more impetus to go on.
I agree. And,
Yeah.
the thing about our art is that it's not a lucrative field.
No.
I mean,
It's not.
you're not going to be living in really nice big homes in this world unless you marry well, But it is. It's cruel. And I remember my first paycheck with City Ballet was $234 take home. And my rent, and that was every week, so I took home about $850 a month, and my rent was half of that. And I would put the money in one account and shift it over to this, and at the end of it was nuts. But
Well, as an apprentice, we made $75 a week.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
And you just can't live on that in New York City. I mean,
You
it's
really
insanity, you know? So I don't know if you remember Oleg Bryansky and his wife, Mireille.
Yes.
Well, Mireille, they were like my second set of parents, and she said, she said this to the girls in point class, this is not easy. I'm asking you to get way up here on the top of your toes. If this was easy, you would have 50,000 people in here with you. And she said, you've got to love this with all your heart.
Yeah.
And if you don't, good luck.
It's true. It's true because if you don't wake up and want to do it, and that happened to me when I decided to stop performing. I woke up one day and I thought, I just don't want to rehearse this many hours.
Yeah.
It was very clear to me that day I woke up and I didn't go back, and of course that wasn't the way to do that. And I
Right.
called the director and he was furious.
Oh.
Yeah, he was furious
And
that
you
I
understand
was,
all this
yeah,
really
I do.
well
now.
now.
I understand, and he was like, "Why are you leaving? I don't think you should leave." And I said, "I have to,"
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think we go up this steep incline, and it's great on the trajectory, but the other side of it, you got to really be prepared
Yeah.
because
Oh, man.
that's the. So, I was talking to Rebecca, and the word mentor comes up a lot. Did you have people that were that way for you, or it wasn't a solo struggle, it never is, but
no. So the first teacher would be a mentor, Ann Brody, right? And then I would say Arthur Mitchell, certainly a mentor. He continued to be even after I left the company. And then I've been at Ailey 26 years, so I had. Had Judith Jamison in my orbit, Sylvia Waters, Denise Jefferson. In fact, I went to Ailey 26 years ago because I wanted to be around female leaders. That was my reason for going there because I had stopped dancing in the late 80s. I had a 9-year hiatus from dance. And when the call came from Ailey to come back, I thought, well, these ladies are running things. I want to do that. So that's why I went to Ailey.
So, what are some of the qualities that make up a good mentor, in your opinion,
Well,
from
I
what
think-
you've seen?
I think you have to listen, right? I think you have to be a good listener, first and foremost. And I think you have to be willing to be honest or tell the truth to an individual.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I think that's a big part of it. And, and offer the advice. Sometimes it's taken, sometimes it's not. But also to always consider that the individual is going to make their decision, and hopefully they're going to make the decision that's best for them. We're just simply sort of facilitators, I think, as mentors.
Yeah, so you were talking earlier about some students in the past that you thought like, man, they'll be perfect for Ailey, but they didn't want to do it.
exactly.
And so, how do you navigate that as a mentor? Kind of, giving advice, but making space for them to also make their own decision on where they believe is a best fit for themselves. How do you navigate that tension?
So I guess in my capacity, I'll call it more as an advisor in this case when students come in and they say, I want to be a professional dancer. And I say, well, what companies interest you? And if they say only Ailey, and I go, well, there's a whole big dance world out here. So let's have a more of a list than that. And so then they'll come with a short list. And I might have a strong opinion about where I think they should go, but I will always say, like, look at the rep of that company, who's the director, look at the type of dancer, look at the contract. There are many reasons. And so I try to not recommend or suggest where I think they should go. I tell them, to audition for as many opportunities as possible, and then once a decision is made or an offer is made, make sure it's the right fit, because I actually think that's the most important part. What's the right fit? In any place, right? That's not only in dance. That's in business. That's in everything we do.
absolutely. Because I think that New York City Ballet was not the right fit for me.
Yeah.
ABT was.
Right.
And I should have gone there, but
Right.
I loved being around Mr. Balanchine.
Yeah,
He was a force du jour,
Exactly.
One thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, when we were coming up, competitions like what we have today just didn't exist. I remember when Fernando got the gold medal at Varna, and everybody was going, "What's Varna?"
Right.
And he was I think he was the first American male dancer to get that. But now we have all over.
Yeah.
And the one I really liked watching the most, and you were on the jury panel, was Grand Prix Lausanne.
Yes.
And Elizabeth Platel, she came to New York
Yeah.
and studied there.
Right.
And I watched that with great interest because it looks like the way it should be. I don't know how to explain that, but just how do you coach and manage these children now? I call them children, but
Right. So I think, the competition studios, the competition world is here to stay. So I'm going to say that first and foremost. And so how do we balance that out? So schools that are specifically about conservatory style training, trying to get those to the profession in the way that you and I, we may know that, may be a little bit different now. I've been on juries for YAGP, Asian Grand Prix, and the Prix de Lausanne. So I see dancers who are competing at a very high level. What I also notice in those circumstances is they're typically there to get an offer for another school, right? So they may be coming there and they get an offer from 2 or 3 schools in another city, in another country. And then the question becomes, do I take this opportunity? I've seen it where dancers take those opportunities because that is their next step. And the teachers that they have from their home studios encourage them to do that. I've seen the flip side of that, where students have been made, offers to further their training, and their home teacher says, I don't want to let you go. So that's the fine line between, this is when I actually think the parents should step in and be more involved with the decision making sometimes, right? Because you have to kind of weigh this out. Where are we going with this? What does a young person intend to do? And sometimes it is about the next step to the next place for the evolution, even though the training has been superior where they are. You know what I'm saying? So it's really something that has to be discussed, and you try to make the best decision for that individual. For some, it may not be leaving home at 14. I did it. Do I recommend that? Not always, because I can see the other side of leaving home, leaving the family, growing up too soon, feeling alone. So I kind of see both sides of, someone staying home, continuing their excellent training with their studio, competing a bit. I also understand it might be wise to leave the home studio for that next opportunity, given the right environment, right, and the right support mechanisms around those places, because that's important too. Because just because I leave home and go to another school doesn't mean I become a professional dancer either. Right, so here's what we're talking about. There are no guarantees. It's kind of a roll of the dice. And so those are the things. It's kind of interesting to figure out what to do.
right. And I love what I'm seeing with a lot like North Charlotte Ballet has started incorporating education.
Sure.
Louisville Ballet.
Yes.
You're going to see it, I think, at Nashville. I think it's like popping up all over the place. And that fusion of having your cake and eat it too, what you love to do, but getting the education. Because at 13, my father said, you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
It's either guitar or it's ballet. It's not both.
Right.
And on both sides, he said, you're going to have a business degree because you're either going to be running a music store or a ballet school.
Right.
And he was right,
Well, I think as ballet dancers, at least during our time, David, I'm not going to speak about now, we were never encouraged to go to college, right?
That's right.
We weren't. So it was either you're going to dance as a teenager and get on with it. Maybe that differs a little bit now, and I've seen that, difference. Dancers at New York City Ballet are certainly pursuing degrees while they're dancing in the company now. I think directors are more open to that. So many more online opportunities. Our dancers at Ailey who are older when they enter the company, many have degrees, 2 degrees.
And that's what started my going to college, because I had to have ligament surgery, and I was sitting in my apartment with my leg up in the air in a cast, and I said, this is crazy. I'm young, and this could end it all, and then what am I going to do? I don't know anything. So there were 2 dancers in New York City Ballet, Linda Homick, who has had this incredible career writing for Dance Magazine. I think she studied psychology and then got her doctorate. And then Delia Peters,
Delia.
an attorney.
Yeah.
And so they got me into Fordham.
Yeah.
And Delia said, you should think about law school one day. And I went that route too. But I think it's just so incredible that these dancers of this time have this opportunity where we had to
Right.
claw and scratch, to get to it.
Yeah. So what it sounds like to me is, for Mississippi artists or for anyone that want to pursue a career in dance, sometimes that pathway could feel a little bit elusive. Kind of like, well, what do I do? Where do I start? And I know, you've been teaching students in Mississippi for a while, so maybe you can speak to this too. But what's needed, and how does that pathway become more clear? And I don't think it will ever become clear, but how does someone just start taking the next steps?
All right, I'm going to try this. I think it's a changing landscape.
Yeah.
So when I look at my current students, I've got some good dancers in there, but I go back every 5 years and I see a difference. And 5 is kind of like the medium, but the dancers I had in 2018, 2019, totally different than what I have now.
Right.
And maybe it's because of cell phones and technology, and the access to instant information is muddying the waters a little bit. But what have you seen in that regard?
Well, because I'm at a modern dance school now, right? Many of the students are also pursuing a degree at the same time, right? So they're doing both, and after they complete their degree, they go on to professional dance companies, So I see more trying to do, the academic piece or other areas of interest while dancing, and trying to keep them, of high standard in both areas. So I see more of that, and I actually encourage it. And I went back to college after my career ended. It took me a long time to get my degree. I just took one course at a time. So I actually really admire, the dancers who pursue college if they can. And, here in this state, there are opportunities to do that, as in many states. So I would say if someone's not sure about what they want to do, if they want to be in the career or not, if they can do serious training while being in a college dance program, so be it. If they're a ballet dancer, maybe that's not the way to go.
One topic that's been in my head for quite a while, and I think it might be because we are in Mississippi, and these young students today have access to everything in their schools. I mean, it's crazy, the list of activities, and I don't look at ballet as an activity or music, but it comes back down to, I think, the parent. And I was reading, I think it was Jennifer Dunning's book, But First to School, and I think Lincoln is quoted as saying to Balanchine, we educate the parents and the children will follow. And I think now it's the opposite. I feel like it's the opposite. Where do you see this in this whole grand scheme of things? Because the landscape is different and information is different.
So, David, prior to COVID, whenever I'd go to a city, I'd have the parents come in with the children, young people, and I'd talk about Alien, the programs, and I'd say, are there any questions? And typically the parents had the questions, the young people never did, and so we would allow that. And I found at that time, wow, they may not know as much as I would think they would know. And with all the technology and, you can Google this and that, people still want to have a conversation about something. So I'll say that. And now, even when I'm in the city, I find that engaging with the parents is really what needs to happen more and more, because with the technology, there's this assumption that maybe the young people are telling the parents about what we've told them. But I think there needs to be sort of more of a holistic engagement with the family itself, right? Maybe the child and the parent in the room together, not necessarily in isolation of each other.
So, I mean, as a dancer myself, that's my first trade, and I can speak to the dancers, and to also encourage the mindset of curiosity. Me transitioning to an executive director position, which I would have never thought, and I would never thought Mississippi either, but curiosity has always taken me down these pathways where even the opportunity to work with the Metropolitan Opera, like that came because I was just curious. I didn't have my mind set up on, oh, well, I'm going to just do this one pathway. I always thought, well, let's see what this is going to bring. Let's see what I'll learn here. And so opening up your mind for curiosity is a huge, huge, huge step into understanding, understanding where you're going to go. And so, how do you guys see just the lens of curiosity, and how important is that to understanding and navigating this world that is so elusive?
So I'll jump right in on that. So first, before I get to curiosity, I'm going to get back to what I think one learns in the dance studio, right? So I think that's the first part I want to talk about, right? So you're understanding discipline, hopefully time management, you know, working with others, collaboration. So there's so much you're learning as a dancer at all levels in the studio that will also help you go on to whatever you decide to do in life. But I think the curiosity is really key, because the more we're curious not only about dance but about the world, I think the better artists we become, the better people we become. So I think the curiosity just should be there in general, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I still have things I want to learn and things I want to do. I feel like there's more for me to do. I just
Yeah.
don't know what it is. So I have to kind of remain open and curious about the world.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree. For me, it's traveling.
Okay.
My wife and I went to France last summer. I hadn't been there in a long time. And I was just, it was breathtaking to me how simple and brilliant the French are, you know. And I don't know, just the whole culture itself, it really changed our way of looking at things. And I was able to go see a class at Paris Opera Ballet School. And Elizabeth was so wonderful about just opening the doors. And there I see this almost the same combinations that we all teach, and this is like the founding school of classical ballet, you know. But we're part of that whole tradition. And this, what is that? You're 2 degrees behind, you know, in with people when
2 degree separation.
yeah, 2 degrees.
Yeah, something like that.
And you know, my kids don't understand that I worked with Baryshnikov and Nureyev and Balanchine and Robbins, and like you with all of the people that, you know, you've come through your life, they don't understand how close they are to that lineage. And for me, that's, it's one way of trying to get into the parents' head to show them that this is a beautiful, gracious art, and it takes so many of us to do it. I mean,
So what pathways exist currently for Mississippi artists that want to go on this pathway? What pathways exist currently, and how can we improve those pathways? And so I guess, I mean, kind of bringing in your
well, for me, I think it starts with the training, and like you were talking earlier, being willing and eager to let them go, and to not push them out, but to guide them out into the world and not hang on to them, because that was my problem. My teacher hung on to me, and I should have been out of it 3 or 4 years earlier.
So like summer camps and summer intensive, like the Ailey intensive, or, you know, Joffrey has an intensive. I know that happens every year.
Right. I think that's just so. I mean, they're all over the place, and they're well directed, and the opportunities are there, and I think it's a springboard. That's, you know, for me, where I would look at it.
And then I think it helps the dancer, it informs their decisions that happen later on, right? So maybe you go off to another city and another place and you say, oh, that's really not for me. So I think that's part of figuring something out. You know, I do.
Being okay with failing.
Exactly, you have to be. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still okay with that.
Yeah.
I failed quite a
Yeah.
bit even now. You know? Yeah.
Man.
It's when we
Being okay
learn
with
the
failing.
most, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to leave some time for some questions. But as an educator, how do you avoid burnout? And have you experienced burnout? Oh.
I have, yeah. I have experienced burnout. I'm you know, I don't feel proud to say that, but, you know, I've been at Ailey 26 years, so probably about 12 years in, I experienced it. I mean, I was lucky. I started out, you know, as co-director of the children's program, did that for 10 years, and I was associate director of the school for 2 years. Then I was co-director of the school and director of the Ailey Fordham BFA in dance. So the trajectory of moving up through the administration was pretty fast, and at each level it becomes more demanding. And I remember at like 12 years in, I was so tired, and it's part of this thing where you just don't figure out how to balance out your time. So I was in Ailey 8 to 10 hours. I was traveling on the weekends for Ailey and never stopping to take a breath. And I remember I hit the wall, and I think you know Dr. Linda Hamilton,
Yes.
who danced with New York City Ballet. Many of you have probably read her articles in Dance Magazine. I called her, and she said, Melanie, you're burnt out. It's simple. She was like, you need to just take a break, even for a week or two. You just need to stop now and get some rest. And she said it, and I almost needed someone to tell me to do that.
Right.
And she told me, and of course, you know, at Ailey, the administration was like, yeah, take a break, take a week off if you need it, you know, because I think we all start going, we're on a treadmill, and we're all doing it for the good of everything, the good of the students, the good of the company, and then sometimes we forget about ourselves. So there's a self in here too that needs to figure out how to balance out, you know, career, life, family, etc.
I couldn't agree more, because we get caught up into that treadmill, so to speak. And in the big companies, you don't have people that are looking out after every single person. And so going back to what you said, this is where parents are we need their involvement.
Teachers maybe too. You know,
yes.
can be also that support.
For me, I had a couple of really good friends. Danny Duell was one of them, and Kipling Houston, and they taught me so many things about the company that I could have never learned, and when to stop.
Yeah.
You know, that's a hard thing to know sometimes.
There's all these barriers that exist. You know, I think about the work that we're doing in the Delta in Clarksdale. The barrier of just having ballet shoes or leotards and tights and having access to talent and to teachers that can come and teach. What advice would you give to dancers in Mississippi today who feels that New York is an impossible dream? What is the first thing you would tell them?
I would say do some research on some summer intensive programs in New York City. Figure out how to audition, whether it be in person in a city near you or by video, and just give it a try.
Okay. And
It's
so-
that simple to me. I think just you have
yeah.
to try.
Yeah. And for organizations like my own, and you know that Max is doing a great job at even providing this opportunity for the community, how can institutions and organizations also be part of creating an infrastructure for dancers to be able to have those pathways, and so it doesn't seem as elusive? You know, what are some things, and this is a great question for you, living and working in Mississippi as well for a long time, for both of us.
Go ahead.
So I was thinking about, okay, I'm gonna use the Max as an example, right? So creating more access within this community to bring dance into this space could be an
Yeah.
interesting idea, right? By bringing me here is also good and interesting, and for me to engage here with dancers from different studios in this area. I went to Laurel. So I think it's about figuring out how to provide access. What does that mean? It could mean, you know, opening up spaces that weren't usually considered spaces for dance.
Yeah.
It might mean, you know, having these dance students go out and experience some other arts in another area.
Beautiful.
So I just think it's about what does that mean? Also, sometimes we need the dance shoes and all of that. And it's wonderful if there are people who are supporters of the arts who want to financially support that, right? We need the resources many times to create this access we're talking about.
We all have to get curious, it
Yeah.
seems like.
And you know, here's the thing, when you put these young students in performances, they get the beauty and the high energy, and yet we can't perform them to death. We need to train them to death so they can go do those other things. But we have to establish that balance, and that's really difficult because we work by budgets and time schedules, and it's just very difficult. And things get taken out that you really want to keep in, but we have to find that way to put them back in.
Working with the students in Clarksdale, I've learned to listen, do a lot of listening to parents and to the students themselves. Get outside of the bubble. You know, we kind of can stay very like high level, but kind of getting down in the weeds and being okay with just doing the dirty work of being really involved in students' lives. And just getting curious, taking risk, thinking outside the box, saying, what if? It's never happened before, but we're creatives. This is what we do. Let's create
It's
opportunities.
intimidating at first, but I
It
think
is.
after the second or third experience, it becomes a way of working and operating and learning, and there's no fear about it.
Yeah, creating those connections. So I want to take some time to ask some questions, and so we want to open it up. Heather, do you want to kind of take lead on how that would work?
Sure. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions?
Don't be bashful.
Okay. Here. Oh,
We have a microphone.
This is, I guess, not so much of a question, but first of all, thank you all for being here so much. Thank you for emphasizing the importance of sometimes pushing students out of the nest. My very first dancer that I taught in Mississippi that became professional, he's now in London. I'm first of all proud that it was a boy, that was, because we don't have a lot of those here. But when he was clearly gifted, and when he turned 12, I said to him and his mother, I'm not enough. Twice a week with me is not enough. And so in kind of pushing him out of the nest, he got a wonderful broad dance education and is now a professional dancer. But that is so important, because studios can feel like such a sort of safe place, but if you have ambition, you gotta broaden your horizons. So thank you for bringing that up.
I want to add, I have a story about that. So there's a student who was at Ailey since he was 4 years old, named Patrick Gamble, right? He started with us at 4 in the Creative Movement program. His siblings were both dancing, so he just kind of started dancing too. So he stayed with us from 4 years old all the way through to high school, dancing at Ailey. Then we have the Bachelor of Fine Arts program in partnership with Fordham. Well, he stayed for that too. And I kept saying, Patrick, when are you going to leave? I kept saying that. And then he joined Ailey too, the second company, so he was still there. So this is like years at Ailey. Finally, last year, he joined the Paul Taylor company. He said, Miss Person, I finally left.
Take him out the mask. Grace. I think Grace.
As an aspiring dancer, how should I keep motivation? And then as an older dancer for younger students, how do I inspire passion and motivation in them?
It's a phenomenal question.
Right. Why don't you take that?
Yeah.
You take that one.
I'm too close to it.
Oh my goodness. Can you repeat it one more time?
As an aspiring dancer, how do I keep my own motivation and passion? And then as an older dancer, like a mentor for younger dancers, how do I inspire it for them?
How do you
double-edged
keep
sword.
it? It is a double-edged sword. I think just understanding your lane. I call it your lane. What you do really good at. As a dancer, it's really easy to look at the person on the left and the right, and try to make yourself a carbon copy of that person. But you are very unique. You have your own way of thinking about the world and ways you like to move. Embrace that and keep on following that. I remember I trained in dance or ballet all throughout high school. But I hated wearing dance shoes. I hated wearing point shoes. I mean, I was good at it, but I just hated it. And so I knew that contemporary needed to be my route, even though a lot of my friends were in the ballet world. And so, but I just have to stick true to who I am. And I like rolling on the floor and breaking all the rules. And so I'm a contemporary dancer. And so stick to who you are.
Let me say something. This is Gracie Watson. She's my student, and she's going to be a wonderful teacher one day. I have her teaching the younger classes, and she's doing things I could never get done with them. So that's why she's asking these.
Oh, and then to your second question, I would encourage if you're an educator now and kind of giving back and pouring back into students, to not make assumptions on students. Keep the assumptions out of it. Keep what your personal feelings about that student and what they can do. Maybe it's a student that may not be as good, may not be as flexible, but you never know what they're going to accomplish. And sometimes that student is going to go on to be the best dancer, and the one that was really, really great may never dance again. And I know that because I was a dancer. And so I keep the assumptions out of it. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. You've inspired me today, and I'm not a dancer. I went to a high school where sports were the leading energy in our high school. And there was one girl in the high school who went to New York City ballet classes, some evenings and weekends. So we didn't see her in a lot of sports. And when I was her friend, she would belittle herself. She wasn't tall enough. She wasn't thin enough. The other girls got the parts because they could be lifted. And she had this really negative self-image. But in our high school, gymnastics were really big. And she became the star of gymnastics because of her discipline and her training in ballet. I don't know where she went after high school, but she won every award in our school, and that helped her self-image, where dance didn't always help her.
And did you know that Baryshnikov was a gymnast?
I didn't.
And when you see all of those things that he could do, I mean,
The leaps.
he made gymnastics a beautiful art. He brought it into the ballet, and there's so many more like that.
And I want to respond a little bit to this body image that you're just bringing up, right? So in the last decade or more institutions, schools are more aware of and changing sort of the narrative around what the dancer should look like, the ideal ballet body, the ideal body for this or whatever. Many are thinking this through differently, understanding that what we say to young people has a deep effect on them, right? At the moment, it may seem like a minor thing, but certainly as a young dancer, I heard things that I hold on to this day. So as an educator now, as a teacher, it's my responsibility not to carry that forward, right? And so once again, it's this sense of, I'm not here to predetermine someone's destiny. Right? So here's my point. When I accept someone to the Ailey School, I accept them because I want to train them. I'm not deciding if they're going into the Ailey company or another modern dance company or contemporary company. I have made a decision to train them as they are, as they develop. And so this is tricky when you have a young dancer who comes into your school and they grow up. They develop over time, right? So I think we have to be more aware of health and well-being for young dancers. Physical health, mental, emotional. This is why we had Dr. Linda Hamilton on our faculty at Ailey for years. They have people at School of American Ballet now, ABT, all of the big schools all around the world. There's more discussion around wellness.
Amen. I mean, this is so
Amen. Well
important.
said.
And the other thing, you know, yes, this body thing has been going on for decades, but I'm finding that it's kind of a relief to have different looking dancers because we've got different needs in the school. And you don't know where they're going to go. I mean, there were some brilliant girls at SAB that never went into City Ballet, and Jennifer Homans is one of them, and look at her. She's writing these books this thick on Apollo's Angels about this whole beginning of dance, and now she's done this one on Balanchine, and she had a brilliant career, I think, at Pennsylvania Ballet. So the top is not Mecca. It's really what we train them to do and take charge of in their lives that I think is important. And I was talking to these two ladies earlier that my teacher wanted to hold me back. And when I started teaching, I swore that was the last thing I was going to try and do is hold a kid from going back and not, you know, pursuing and go see what your dreams are. You know, go throw the net out there, as I like to tell them, because they don't know what they're going to bring in, and it could be something fabulous, and it could be something awful, but we have to learn. And that's why I'm so concerned about parents really being involved with this process, because it's a beautiful art. And oh my gosh, we need beauty in this world more than anything. I've been saying this all my life, but you know, I love this discussion about that because it's necessary. So thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Do you have any? Okay, sure.
I want to thank y'all for being here first. Hi. Each of the three of you have talked about your entry point to dance. And I know you've also each had really impactful careers outside of your time as a professional dancer. So I'm curious about that transition for you, because you've referred to it obliquely in different ways, as well as what other kinds of careers are there in the dance world other than being on the stage?
Fantastic question.
So when I stopped dancing with Dance Theater of Harlem in the late 80s. My first job actually was working with the actress Cicely Tyson as her executive assistant. She knew me from the stage and she thought, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. She says, well, you're going to work for me. So working with her kind of helped me figure out, like, now, Melanie, you're an independent, you've got to figure out your next steps. So going to college was one of those things I decided to do because I wanted to know more about, subject matters other than dance. And I managed a store for 9 years during the time I was in college. So I had a 9-year hiatus from dance. And I was able to be in the store because I think I understood a lot of things that I learned in the dance studio. I could work with people well. It felt like a little bit of a performance. And so 26 years ago when I got the call to come to Alien, the director says, I want you to come to Alien. I said, oh, like, what would I do? I don't have any skills. I started freaking out. And she was like, actually, you do have administrative skills. She referred to the time in the dance studio, the time managing the store. And she was like, this is going to be customer service. And she was right. So once I kind of like started putting together all the different things that I had learned along the way, I felt comfortable moving into the next stage of the career. And I think that's why I've had the ability to kind of advance at Ailey in each new iteration of being a director. And I don't think it's over for me. Now I'm trying to redefine the next career for myself outside of Ailey. So I'm going to probably incorporate everything I've learned along the way and figure out what the next step would be.
For me, I danced in New York for 7 or 8 years and then moved back to Atlanta. And around 3 years in, I knew I had these other interests. And so I want to lift up the word curiosity because I was just curious. I knew that there was something more. I love social justice work, equity work. And so I just asked a friend and she said, well, we have this conference led by Dr. Hawa Abdi, working with women and children and teachers that teach in post-war conflict zones. And so I said, yes, I want to do it. I'll do it for free. I just want to get involved. And so I did that, and that led me to them taking me out to Rwanda to do the same thing there. I mean, it literally like just jumped me and catapulted me like into this crazy world of education and coordinating and administration I never thought I would do. And then went back to Atlanta and I worked with Atlanta Guardian, which is with trafficked women and kids, and then now I'm here. And so I just got curious, and I knew that there was something more that I had to do in the world, and I just started to take those steps towards it.
For me, and this is going to sound very materialistic, but it's not. It's a struggle to make a career in this art. Well, it was in my day, and I think it's a lot better for the dancers now. I think things have changed. It's just different in the companies. But for me, I became obsessed with getting my education. And I finished my undergrad, and then I took a year out, and then I went to law school, and I was clerking on the state Supreme Court. But the first day in law school, I was like, you idiot, what have you done? And I got through that first semester, and I looked at my dad, and I said, I can't do this. He said, no, you go and you finish it, you see what your grades are, and then you make up. You said, you never quit. You don't just throw in the towel because it's difficult. You fight it out. So I finished the law career in 2.5 years instead of 3. And this art has a way, I think, of calling us back, if we're supposed to. And you can call it God, you can call it the universe. It calls you back. And I got over my obsession with having to make a living, because I was doing what I love to do. And I think it's Dave Ramsey that says, go do that, and you'll get up every morning and go to work. And it made a lot of sense. So, but one of the things we were kind of talking about is that when you're in this career, you have to have something, I don't want to say on the sidelines, but something in your life that kind of calms you down so you can get your head out of that treadmill space, because it's hard. It's really difficult work. And for me, it was music. I mean, I can't ever remember not playing a piano or a guitar or anything like that. And that brought peace to my life, and now it's become a second career for me. So you know, and for somebody else, it might be playing pro golf. I want to go do that now too, you know, take my anxiety out of that golf ball, you know.
Sounds like you can be more than one thing. You don't have to just be a dancer.
Right.
You can be, it's both and. You can be anything you want to be.
You know, we talk a lot about that here at the Max, how so many of our artists sort of run in every direction. And so the more you dig into the people around here, you'll see just that. Help me thank these three wonderful individuals for being here.
To learn more and support the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience, go to msarts.org.